Today, wrecked by rodents and written off, the rats wreaking havoc on cars.
There were soya-based products in the coating of the wire. I was just completely shocked. I'd never heard of anything like this before.
Plus, the mobile home sold without planning permission. How the owners are now at risk of losing absolutely everything.
Actually, what they've purchased is a holiday home. The consequence of that is you can be evicted at any point.
Welcome to Rip Off Britain.
Hello and welcome to the programme that shines a spotlight on the companies you say are letting you down and then holds them firmly to account.
Today, the phantom energy bill that won't go away. One woman's fight to get to the bottom of a bill that simply isn't hers.
I don't know whose account it is, but I know for certain it's not mine. It's just a complete mystery.
But first, car trouble. There's plenty of cases that hit our mailbox about breakdowns and repairs, but this twist was a new one on us. We've heard from drivers whose vehicles have been severely damaged by rats.
I know, I've sort of been dreading this one, but we'll see what happens. But it's not only us who are hearing about it, because the RAC says it's recording record numbers of breakdowns caused by these creatures, by rats. Well, shortly I'll be coming up very close and personal with one of our furry little friends to try and understand better why it's becoming such a problem and what we can all do about it. But first, here's more on the shocking consequences when a rat gets into your pride and joy.
Heidi Anderton from Forest Hill in South London always wanted a VW camper van.
I just want to go out and see a little bit more of what's going on in the world, and I liked the freedom of it.
And in 2021, she spent £63,000 on this beauty, a second-hand VW van converted into the camper of her dreams by a specialist company.
What I liked about it was that it was compact, and I knew I could take that vehicle anywhere, into little villages and to more remote coastal places as well.
But in October 2022, when driving on the motorway with her son, Heidi was alarmed to see warning lights suddenly appear on the dashboard.
I thought it was probably a sensor or something. As we continued our journey, then we started getting electrical sign coming up on the van. That was very concerning.
The van was still under warranty, so Heidi took it to VW to diagnose the fault. And she could not believe what they discovered.
VW had sent me a video underneath the car of damage to the wiring, and I was shocked when it was hanging down from the vehicle.
According to the mechanic, rats were responsible. Chewing away at the wires, they had disabled various components. Heidi was absolutely dumbfounded.
I was just completely shocked. I'd never heard of anything like this before. I just didn't think rats would be targeting cars. I thought about what could be attracting them. So I looked in the van and there was no food sources in the van. There was nothing in the vehicle that I knew of that was attracting them.
And the rodent-related repairs would not come cheap.
The cost was about £400 to £500, and the wiring wasn't covered under the warranty. But as a gesture of goodwill, VW said they would pay part towards it. And I just thought it was a one-off. Because it's a new van, I didn't think it was going to happen again.
But then it did. In January 2023, the rats returned, and this time the damage was even worse.
The damage to the vehicle was over £1,000, and one of the concerns I had was a safety issue of them chewing through these cables underneath and how they may affect the driving of the van.
Heidi had to pick up that bill herself, but she still couldn't work out why the rats were finding her VW camper's wires so irresistible. So she did some research online.
One of the reasons that came up about why this was happening is because there were soya-based products in the coating of the wire, and that was what was attracting the rats to eat it.
Bingo! For Heidi, that was enough to lay the blame at VW's door. Plant-based materials like soy, are considered to be more environmentally friendly than traditional plastics. But believing that the materials VW had used in the wiring could be attracting vermin, she wanted the company to do something about it.
I asked them if they could coat the wires or cover them or wrap them in something to stop the rodents being attracted to them. But what they've said is that they can't wrap them because there's too much heat underneath. They can't tie them up because it will be a health and safety issue. And basically, they've just kind of left me hanging with no support or no prevention for the future.
Unhappy with that response, she took her case to the Motor Ombudsman. It's not a legal body, but is able to order member organisations to put things right. And it had a view on the potential use of plant-based materials in the wiring.
The Ombudsman highlighted that it is commendable that the VW are using more sustainable products in their wiring, which I completely agree with, but not that it's food sources, because that's going to attract rodents.
In its judgment, the Ombudsman said that if wiring materials made from food sources are indeed attracting rodents, it raises concerns about the suitability and longevity of these materials. It added that occurrences like Heidi's are not uncommon with vehicles that utilise plant-based materials in the vehicle's wiring. But despite its sympathetic position, the Ombudsman said the warranty was clear. Wires simply weren't covered. Heidi would have to pay, leaving her worrying that it could all happen again, with her ending up even more out of pocket.
It's just ridiculous, because I don't know every time when I go to use that vehicle if I'm going to be stranded somewhere.
Breakdowns caused by rodents are on the rise, with the RAC reporting a 55% increase in the year 2023. It's a nightmare scenario that Sophie Rees from Swansea knows all too well. In October 2022, she spent £2,500 on a second-hand Vauxhall Zafira. But during a routine trip to the garage, a mechanic spotted telltale signs that rats had made a home in it, and just like Heidi's VW, they'd made a beeline for the wires.
There was rat poop and bones and rubbish in the car. It looked like the rats had taken it into the engine to nest, but also chewed on the wires.
The first repair cost Sophie around £100. And not long afterwards, she was forced to shell out a further £300 when it happened again. But when, just a few months later, the little critters struck for a third time, her mechanic said it was curtains for Sophie's Zafira.
He looked at the car, he noticed there was more chewed wires, and it's not repairable. Given the age of the car and the value of the car, it just wasn't feasible.
Sophie's car was a write-off. She had the car scrapped and her insurance paid out. But her premiums are now a whopping £145 a month, 2.5 times what she was paying before. And that has hit Sophie hard.
I can't afford that. I'm skipping meals to be able to have a car for my kids. I parked it up safely outside my home, but I had no way of preventing the rodents getting in there. The insurance just don't care.
Vauxhall told us it had no comment to make on Sophie's Zafira. But when we contacted VW about Heidi's van, it told us there are no products in the wiring or pipe coating which would actively attract animals. It added that rodents can seek out chewing materials and nesting places, gaining access through very small holes, and there are areas of vehicles that cannot and should not be completely sealed. But for Heidi, her love affair with the VW camper is over, and she wants shot of the van once and for all.
I've spent a lot of money on that van, and I think that VW have a responsibility to resolve it in some way, whether that be covering the components or anything, or buying the van back off of me. I can't afford to keep paying on this vehicle, and I just can't see a way out of this. I just can't see a way forward.
I have to admit, I feel very sorry for those girls in the film and what happened to their vehicles. But in a moment, Julie is going to be right outside here on the piazza talking to pest experts on how to protect your car from the rising numbers of rats. But first, I'm joined by one of the little culprits. She'd actually look quite sweet, as well as wildlife expert Scott Adams. Scott, I have to admit up front, I don't think I'd be great if that rat came over here. But anyway, maybe you should introduce me to her.
So this is Anne Rataway. So this is the type of rat that would unfortunately be coming into conflict with maybe chewing wires in your car. But she's been hand-reared, so she's obviously a little bit more friendly than you'd find them if they were out in the streets.
So the thing is, we've obviously seen the film, and all the experts, including the motoring organisation, they say that rats are on the increase.
Yeah.
Are they vastly on the increase?
I'm not sure that there's been a population explosion of rats, but because of, especially last year, you know, the long wet winters, lots of cold weather, I think there's been more rats that are starting to come and look for shelter and food in places where people would actually be living.
Which brings us to why rats are so attracted to pipes and things within an engine. Why is that?
I think it's a whole host of things, really. I think the first thing that we need to kind of like know is that rats and rodents' teeth grow constantly, so that they have to chew on things all the time to keep their teeth short and to keep them so they're not so sharp. So nothing's off the menu, really. You know, they have been found to eat through concrete, chew through metal. It's
I love your phrase,
really,
nothing's off the menu.
Nothing's off the menu.
Actually, let me give the menu here, because these are like hard as rocks. These have come from a vehicle.
Yeah.
And this one, for example, I mean, just eaten through.
Yes, obviously, if we left this in her enclosure, you know, overnight, you know, she'd be exploring that, she'd be nibbling through it to see what was inside it. She might be taking parts back to make a nest. I mean, these are all the things that a rat would be doing if they were contemplating using inside somebody's car as a new nesting site.
Well, Scott, it's been a most interesting day today, most interesting guest, and thank you very much for bringing Anne Rataway into the studio. And at this point, we're going to hand over to Julia, who's out on the BBC Piazza.
Well, after all that, the question is, if rats are chewing through your car, who are you going to call? Well, as it happens, we have here Chris and Mark, who are from Pest Interceptors, and they are going to let us into all the secrets of how they get in there in the first place and what you can do about it. And Ian here, who has brought us this lovely vehicle. And Ian, I gather you've been a victim of rat attack. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, it's happened twice actually now. And through the dealership, they identified that the rats had actually chewed, or rodents had actually chewed underneath the vehicle and destroyed quite a lot of the wiring and some of the sensors and things. So.
And I presume it's quite a costly business repairing all that.
Yeah, it's cost us about £800 in repairs so far.
Well, Chris and Mark, I imagine this is a sort of story you're very familiar with. I mean, is it becoming more common?
Definitely over the last few years at least. We've seen quite a few calls about it, haven't we? Initially it was only once every now and again, but it is getting more and more.
Yeah, it's definitely going up on the chart, isn't it, rather than down.
And what can you do to deter the rats apart from installing a rather large cat?
Well, there's an awful lot of things out on the market that we come across on a regular basis. This is called a rat mat. We'll touch on that in a moment. But there's also anti-rodent spray. There are a couple of different types of this, and the great thing about this, it works similar to the stuff that you used to put on your children's nails to stop them biting their fingernails. So a rat will still go into the engine bay, go to chew it, but think, that's not soy, that's disgusting.
Have you used it, Ian?
I have actually, yeah. I've been using it for about a year, and it's worked so far.
Yeah. So that's the cheap one. What's the rather more expensive?
This is the top end of the market.
So top end of the market is a thing called a rat mat, and basically down here we have an energizer pack which can be plugged into a car battery or to the mains, and that puts a light voltage through all of this. It doesn't electrocute the rat or the mouse, but it's not a very nice sensation to them.
Well, I like the whole approach, which is basically to deter but not to kill.
Exactly.
Well, it's been lovely that you brought this beautiful thing in. And are you having happy motoring now?
Love it, absolutely love it.
Good.
Yeah, it's a dream.
Excellent. Well, thank you both very much, and thank you for coming in. Happy motoring.
Now, time for our advice clinic, where we put you in touch with a team of top consumer experts. In today's advice clinic, I'm joined by lawyer Gary Rycroft, and we're speaking to Patricia Rolfe, who's actually taken time out of her holiday in Mallorca to tell us about a rather bumpy issue that we all dread, potholes. Hi, Patricia, thanks for joining us. We know that potholes are a national nuisance. You've had your own tale to tell with one. Take us through what happened.
Well, on the 30th of May, I was driving through Midgate Avenue. There were 16 potholes. Unfortunately, I was forced to hit the biggest one because of other traffic, and I didn't realise, but I cracked one of the wheel on the driver's side of my car. So on the 6th of June, I took my car to have it MOT'd, and the garage said, "You've got a cracked wheel. It won't pass unless you have a replacement." So I said, "Well, go ahead and replace it." The cost was £630.
Ouch. Patricia, how frustrating. We've got some of the photos of these offending potholes. What did you do next after you'd done that?
I sent them to the council and tried to make a claim. Now, the last email I had from the council said that we are not going to pay you out. We checked that road on the 29th of August, 2023, and it was fine then.
Essex County Council checks it had made a year earlier had shown no dangerous defects in the road surface. And as the road had been categorised as requiring inspection only once a year, it couldn't have been expected to take any action to prevent the damage to Patricia's car that happened just a few months later. I'm going to pick up with Gary here to see what he makes of what you've been through.
Poor old Patricia, what a frustrating situation, and of course very expensive as well. Now, to bring a successful claim for pothole damage, you have to bring in various factors. The first factor is that you've got to prove that there's been damage to your car. You've also got to show that there's a pothole. You can almost see the Roman road there, can't you, really? You know, it really is a very deep pothole, so that's great evidence. The next thing that you need to show is negligence on the part of Essex Highways, that either they knew about the pothole and had done nothing about it, or they should have known about it because they have a maintenance programme that would have identified the pothole.
Well, we have been in touch, as you can guess, with Essex Highways. I'm going to read you, Patricia, what they said. They said all compensation claims are investigated fully and damages are paid if the council is liable. It added that the law provides a defence for highways authorities against claims of this nature if it can be proven reasonable steps were taken to ensure the highway was not dangerous. In order to fulfil this, Essex Highways carries out routine safety inspections. All defects reported are assessed by an inspector and prioritised accordingly. That's their response. I don't think probably, Patricia, is what you're looking for, is it?
No. Well, the thing is, when they said the last time they'd looked at that road was in August 23, they obviously hadn't looked at that road since.
Gary says this is key information and that she should consider taking Essex County Council to the Small Claims Court.
That is the heart of the matter in this case, and she needs to argue that, in fact, since the inspection was carried out in the summer, there was a winter. We all know what winters are like. That's when potholes arise. So her argument would be, well, actually, you should have inspected following the winter, and if you'd done that, then you would have spotted it, you would have repaired it, and I wouldn't have incurred the damage. So I think go for it, Patricia.
Patricia, are you going to?
I more than likely will.
Oh, look at that.
Brilliant.
Thank you both very much indeed. And I know that was so much to take in. So what we'll do is we'll put Gary's advice on our website. Thank you both. And as a cyclist and a driver, I have a pet hate of potholes. They really can cause terrible damage. Anyway, if you have a complaint that just won't wait, then get in touch with us. Email us at ripoffbritain@bbc.co.uk.
Or you can send us a message via WhatsApp on 0330 678 1321 or via Facebook. Just search for BBC Rip Off Britain.
Or my favourite, simply put pen to paper. The address is Rip Off Britain, BBC Media City UK, Salford, N52LH.
Still to come, we've been covering issues with mobile homes for many years, but it looks like serious problems persist. I'll be hearing about the BBC investigation that might make you think twice before buying this type of property.
But now to another thorny topic that here on the programme is as important to us as it is to you, energy bills. During the winter, I guess we're all weighing up the alternatives, piling on the extra layers of clothing or tweaking the thermostat.
Well, it's bad enough trying to budget your own energy costs, but what if you were told that you had to foot the bill for a perfect stranger's energy as well? That's exactly what happened to Wendy in this next story. She has been faced with that whole scenario, but she's not taking matters lying down. Indeed, far from it.
Hello, do you happen to recognise this name? Or are you with OVO Energy? I'm sorry to bother you. You don't happen to know a Jessica? I just keep having invoices from OVO Energy addressed to a Jessica, and I've no idea who she is. I don't know who this person is. I don't know whose account it is, but I know for certain it's not mine. It's just a complete mystery.
Wendy Dixon has lived in her home in Carmarthenshire, Wales, for almost 40 years. It's a small holding complete with a whole host of animals.
My mum and dad bought this property in 1986, and I've lived here ever since. I know every single nook and cranny in this place, and it's my home.
Over the years, Wendy has changed her energy supplier several times. But since 2020, she's been with Octopus Energy.
So the energy that I use is the same as everybody else. Washing machine, kettle, oven, and lights.
However, since June 2023, Wendy has been having problems with another energy company, OVO, after a very mysterious bill landed on her doorstep.
I was really confused because they were addressed to Jessica. I didn't know a Jessica. There was no Jessica living here. I didn't even know any Jessicas in the locality. But it was my address, and there was a debt of £740.32. Who was Jessica? Why my address? Where was the connection? Couldn't understand it.
And so Wendy's journey to track down the mystery bill owner began. She jumped straight on the telephone to OVO.
The lady at the end of the phone said, well, we've traced her to your address using what we call a track and trace system. I said, but your track and trace system has let you down. She doesn't live here, never has done. She said, oh, OK, I'll make a note of that. If you can destroy what you've had in the post, then that'll be fine. It's the end of the matter.
But the following month, another letter arrived, so Wendy got back to OVO.
So I sent them an email and had an immediate email back saying that they couldn't discuss the matter with me because it's not my account.
Wendy was back at square one, but over the next few months, she proved a dogged detective, and she made dozens of phone calls and sent numerous emails to OVO in an attempt to resolve the whole issue. All the while, she continued to receive payment demands, and they were rising fast.
24th of July, 2023, £740.32 in debit. 21st of December, 2023, £963.42 in debit. July 2024, £1,515.45 in debit. I've already told them I don't know who Jessica is. She does not live at this address. I'm constantly thinking, how is this affecting my credit rating? Because they're not my invoices, but there is a debt at this address. I didn't know what I could do.
The situation unexpectedly escalated in October 2023. Wendy was out, but she got a call from her son telling her that they had an unexpected and an unwelcome visitor.
He said, Ma'am, there's a bailiff and his enforcement officer on the drive. I explained to him, as I had explained to OVO Energy, probably at this point at least 20 times. Jessica did not live at the address, she never had, and that I was with Octopus.
The enforcement officer checked the 2 meters at the property and confirmed that the meter number on the debt did not match up with either of Wendy's, but I'm afraid that was little comfort.
To have somebody on the drive that to do with a debt that was nothing to do with us was deeply distressing.
Determined to get to the bottom of this unfolding mystery, in October 2023, super sleuth Wendy gathered together her evidence and took her findings to the Energy Ombudsman. It found in her favour, setting out the actions OVO needed to take to resolve the issue.
So the first remedy was to provide me with a £200 goodwill gesture. The second one was that I'd receive a full written apology.
But there was one remedy that was to prove problematic. to reactivate the energy account as if it had not been finalised.
I took that to mean that they were reopening the account in the name of the actual account holder at the address that the invoice actually related to, and not my address. I accepted the resolutions and I thought that was the end of it.
But it wasn't. In December 2023, the OVO bills were back, and the following month's bill revealed what appeared to be a disastrous misinterpretation of the Ombudsman's instruction.
They'd removed Jessica from the account and it now bore the name of my husband and I at her address. So suddenly the debt was now ours uniquely.
Rather than find Jessica and locate the meter attached to the account, OVO had just transferred the account and the debt into Wendy's name. What's more, rather than going straight into her pocket, the £200 Wendy had been promised had been knocked off the debt.
It hadn't been resolved. In fact, it had gone up a few gears and it was so much worse now. And at this point I thought, what do I do next? Where do I turn next? Because I'm running out of options here now.
8 months after the debt was transferred to her name, she is still no closer to a resolution.
Since the invoices started coming in my name, I've been in contact with the Ombudsman, who keeps waiting for responses from OVO. I've been contacting OVO, who say that these things take time and that they're investigating. There have been times I've been at my wit's end. Throughout the whole process, I've had apologies, but it's not words that I need, it's actions.
And despite her dogged detective work, she still doesn't know who the elusive Jessica is, or indeed where the mystery meter may be found. The trail has gone cold, and Wendy's been left picking up the pieces.
How can this be continuing when it's not my name, it's not my meter number?
When we spoke to OVO, it suggested that when Jessica's account was opened, it could have been registered to Wendy's property in error because it has a similar address. It said it's now been in touch with Wendy to explain and resolve her issue, and confirmed that her account is closed and there is no outstanding balance linked to her home or any neighbouring property. As for the Energy Ombudsman, it said it reviewed all the available evidence to make an initial decision and outline the required remedies. But after this initial decision was made, new information was provided that made it clear that there was more to this case than initially thought. It said energy suppliers are legally required to act on its findings and reiterated that Wendy's issue has now been resolved. Well, Wendy has certainly posed a lot of very valid and important questions there. And our consumer expert, Sarah Penrose, joins us now in the studio to hopefully try to shed some light on the situation. So, Sarah, I'm left after watching that film and saying, how on earth could that ever happen in the first place?
Well, Gloria, you and I have covered a number of energy billing problems in the programme over the last few years. I have to say this one is particularly shocking because the Energy Ombudsman was actually quite clear that Wendy didn't owe this, but OVO still chased her for it. Now, it is normally down to a meter mix-up. Now, if there's an error, that's where you can get a bill, and it's often from a company you're not being supplied by, as Wendy found out.
So when it comes to the Energy Ombudsman, who you think would have the definitive answer for everything, what do you make of the handling of that?
Well, I think they were quite clear about the fact that OVO should ensure that the bill was not now linked to Wendy. I think one of the problems, though, is that the Energy Ombudsman isn't like a court. It doesn't have those legal powers. Now, energy suppliers are supposed to abide by the Energy Ombudsman's ruling, but if for any reason they don't, then the options available to you are to either go back to the Energy Ombudsman or maybe to complain to somebody else like Citizens Advice or indeed your local MP.
And of course, she's naturally worried about a credit rating. So where does she stand there?
Well, again, the Energy Ombudsman did say that OVO must make sure there are no negative markers on her credit file. I would suggest that she contacts the 3 major credit reference agencies, Equifax, Experian and TransUnion, just to check that isn't the case. If you're in this situation and for any reason there is a negative marker for a bill that you don't owe, then you can challenge it. It's called raising a dispute. Do it with the credit reference agency, and while they investigate that, a marker will be put on that information, and credit providers cannot rely on it when they're making a decision about you.
Do you know, Sarah, I don't know where you get all this information from, but you're brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. And by the way, if you know who Jessica is, please do drop me a line.
Park home, mobile home, static caravan, or even lodge. There's lots of labels to describe the type of property we're focusing on in this next item. But one thing is for sure, these are places that people who own them call home permanently, or at least that's the idea.
But park homes, while offering an opportunity for many residents to live out happy lives, also have a long history of problems. For some, the properties have been the source of tension and insecurity.
Shortly, I'm going to be speaking with BBC reporter Rory Carson about some heartbreaking cases he's uncovered in his recent investigation into this topic. First, though, take a look at this report we made back about one park home resident in 2011 who found his peaceful existence turned upside down. When we first met John Gilmore way back in 2011, he lived here in the beautiful Devon countryside, in a property known as a park home. It's a term that describes a prefabricated mobile home on a designated site, and John really did make it his home.
That's my sun deck with the hanging baskets and the flowers and the decking that I had. That's the other end of the sun deck.
But 4 years after moving in, life for John changed. New owners took over the site, and it wasn't long before they started to make changes.
My place was parallel to the road, and he wanted to widen the road. But not only that, he wanted me to turn 90 degrees so I was in line with all the others, which they did.
But in the process, John's porch and decking were demolished. Rebuilding them would cost John £9,000, so he asked the new park owners to foot the bill, but they refused.
I'm afraid living here has been spoiled by the way we've been treated.
At the time, the park's owners told us that John had been made aware that unauthorised extensions, including his porch and deck, would not be moved as part of the work. The park has since changed ownership. But his experience was symptomatic of wider problems for park home owners, who felt they had fewer rights to enjoy their homes and less security than residents of traditional housing, something that seriously concerned Trading Standards Officer Martin Fisher.
Owners can increase the rents year on year. They're entitled to increase the pitch fee each year by the rate of RPI. I wouldn't advise anybody in the current climate to buy a park home, frankly, because even if you are absolutely certain that the park home site operator is absolutely splendid, how do you know whether he or she is going to have to sell up?
Campaigning for change was Sonia McCall of the Park Homeowners Justice Campaign, who reflected on John's case.
I think it's very typical, to be honest, of what's happening, pretty widespread, and I'm hearing about all over the country.
Does the park have a residents' association? Yes.
I said, well, thank you ever so much. That's really kind of you, and we'll get something done.
Back in 2011, Sonia was fighting hard for the rights of mobile home residents, including campaigning for annual pitch fee rises to no longer be linked to the higher RPI measure of inflation. As we're about to find out, she has had some successes, including helping to bring about new legislation in 2013 and 2023. But in 2024, a wide-ranging BBC Panorama investigation revealed owners were still facing challenges.
Hello, Alison.
Yes.
I'm Rory.
Including being missold homes they planned to live in all year round on sites that only had permission for holiday homes, leaving them fearing for the future. Well, Sonia McCall from Park Home Owners Justice Campaign, who featured in that film, joins us along with Rory Carson, the reporter behind the recent BBC Panorama investigation into park homes. Rory, I'll come to you in a moment. Sonia, first of all, lovely to see you back and lovely to see you in that film as well.
Thank you for having me.
You still continue with your work, working on behalf of park home residents. What wins have you had over these years?
We've stopped cell blocking. Cell blocking was when the site owner had the approval of the buyer and he was able to stop a sale for any amount of reasons, and it was at epidemic levels across the country whereby people could not sell their homes. So we set about changing the law, and in 2013 we managed to do that, and I think the 2013 Act then followed.
Your campaign was actually instrumental in that Act. That means pitch increases will be based on CPI, not RPI. What difference does that make to people who have these homes?
A tremendous amount of money that is in their purse at the end of the year, I would say, on the monthly payments that they make. And bear in mind that their pensions go up by the consumer price index and not the retail price index.
So you've done some hard work, you've won some battles. Are the battles over?
No, not at all. We need to see the 10% commission charge changed. That is a dreadful charge. Residents have to pay when they sell their home to a site owner. These homes can cost up to £500,000. That means that when they sell their home, they would have to give the site owner £50,000 for doing absolutely nothing.
OK, so talk to me also about site owners, and there are some site owners who are not. How should we describe them?
Rogues.
Right. Tell me what's going on.
Basically, we have unscrupulous rogue site owners. And the main thing, I think, is this ties in with the 10% very much. Because if we can stop the 10%, you're not giving the incentive to the rogues to stay in the industry to get this money.
Rory, just give us a sense of what's going on from what you can see.
There's probably about just shy of 200,000 people who live on these park home sites. Like, I spoke to hundreds of people who live in these sites and will range from low-level intimidation to some of the more serious stuff. And you've two main types of parks. You've got residential parks, of which the clue's in the title. You can live on them, you pay council tax, and you're protected by the Mobile Homes Act. You've got some form of protection. Now, the mis-selling in that sphere was things like shoddy workmanship, homes left unfinished, maybe without proper electric, poor heating, lack of proper running water, all the way up to homes being sold without planning permission. And we also looked at mis-selling in the holiday park side. And you will have loads and loads of people that I spoke to will have sold their home and will think, I'm going to spend my twilight years in a lovely home surrounded by people my own age and enjoy the rest of your life. And they're told they can live there all year round. They buy the property or they buy the van for maybe 150 to 200,000.
A lot of money.
A lot of money, life savings, all the money that they've got. And they find out maybe a couple of months down the line that actually what they've purchased is a holiday home. The consequence of that is you're not protected properly by the legislation and you can be evicted at any point. And the real tragedy of all of this is the sort of the human cost.
We approached the British Holiday and Home Parks Association, which represents the UK park owners and managers, about these issues. It told us there are important legal differences between buying a holiday caravan and a park home, and that it's important to check a site has a residential site licence and to obtain what's known as a written statement if you're planning to live in it. It said buyers should consider taking independent legal advice before spending a lot of money on a caravan or park home. It also pointed us to an explainer video, which we've shared on our website at bbc.co.uk/ripoffbritain. So, Sonia, you've been working on this for a long time. What would you like to see to improve protections for park home residents?
I would like to see a regulatory body put in to regulate local authorities. This is where a lot of problems occur, in as much as they have a licence for a park for, say, 40 homes. And then you find that the site owner comes along and puts 10 more bases down over and above what is allowed. Instead of the local authorities going in immediately and saying, whoa, stop this, you're not allowed to do this, take it up, they don't. And then the homes come on, people buy those homes, and they're buying on a park that's not properly licensed, and we need either a dedicated park homes officer in every local authority or a regulatory body from central government.
When we put those comments to the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government, it said it's supporting local councils to use existing powers to tackle bad practices, adding that it is aware of the concerns around site owners' commission on park home sales and will set out a plan on that in due course. It pointed out that selling a holiday caravan without clearly setting out that it can't be used for residential purposes is already an offence, and that local authorities are able to take action against site owners. There will be people who are really interested in this type of home. So what is your advice to them?
Well, if they're buying a residential home, they must certainly do their homework. Go to local authorities, bring in a solicitor to deal with it. You would do this if you were buying any other form of home. This is no different. This is your home, it's your life savings, it's everything that you've got. And you must have somebody legal behind you to look at everything that you could fall down on.
Rory and Sonia, thank you both so very much for coming to talk to us. And Rory's investigation is available on BBC iPlayer. Just search Panorama Mobile Home Swindle. I'm afraid that's almost it for today. If you need a refresher, though, from how to protect your car from rats to fighting an energy company, head to BBC iPlayer for this episode and lots more. Just search Rip Off Britain.
Well, what an eclectic set of topics we've covered in today's programme. And it's not over yet. There's time for a couple of quickfire questions to our brilliant experts, Sarah and Gary. But, guys, you need to be quick. OK, Gary, this one for you. Nigel Webb ordered a denim jacket from a retailer through an online marketplace, but the jacket didn't fit. He requested to return for a refund a few days later, but he's been told he isn't entitled to one. What can he do?
Well, he is entitled to one. So the good news for Nigel is if you buy from a business, even if it's an online marketplace, you have the same rights as if you are buying online direct with the business. And under the Consumer Rights Act, if you're buying online, you have 14 days from receiving the goods to change your mind about them and send them back. And you don't need to give a reason. So he absolutely can ask for a refund.
Right, Sarah, this is for you. Patricia Willocks asked why a retailer is allowed to offer a discount only on its mobile phone app. Trish says she struggles to use apps due to a medical condition, but the retailer said she could not access the discount any other way.
Well, I think Tricia isn't alone in feeling this sort of frustration around not being able to access some of the discounts that retailers offer. Now, Age UK has looked into the whole issue of people who are digitally excluded and reckons about almost 6 million people who either don't have online access or don't feel confident using the internet and specifically their smartphones. So I think it's not the last we've heard of it yet. I would say for Tricia that there may be other organisations that take up the cause on her behalf.
Gary, this is from Brian Byrne. He wrote in on behalf of his daughter saying her car has been at a local garage for repair for 5 months following a breakdown. It still won't start and she now has a bill for £4,400. The garage has asked her to sign a disclaimer to stop any comebacks on them for a faulty repair or overcharging. They also say she can only pay in cash. What are their rights?
Oh, my goodness, Louise. Where do we start with that one? Well, first of all, if the car's been there for 4 months and it's still not working properly, then she absolutely should not be paying yet. She should only pay the bill when she's satisfied that the goods and services provided are fit for purpose. And at the moment, they're not fit for purpose if the car's not working again. So she shouldn't be paying over that money. She also should not be signing a disclaimer. If she had been asked to sign a disclaimer, if she'd signed it, I would say it was an unfair contract term and unenforceable. The last point about the cash, actually, a business can decide how you should pay them, so they can say you must pay in cash, but I would say in that case, get a receipt and ask them to confirm whether they are registered for VAT, and if they are registered for VAT, make sure that the price you've paid is inclusive of VAT.
Lots to remember. Thank you very much, Gary.
A lot to remember. But anyway, that, I'm afraid, is where we have to leave it for today. Thank you all so very much for your company. And thanks to our team, of course, for all that marvellous advice. We'll see you again soon. But from everybody in Rip Off Britain, bye-bye.
Goodbye.